Hey, this is Adam with the Productivity Academy. I recently finished reading Clockwork by Mike McAllowitz, and I've been using this cool thing. You might have seen it from Timular, and there's a really cool tie into this, but keep watching. I'm going to go in and do a quick review so you can see if this is a book for you. All right, as I just said, I'm going to be talking about Clockwork by Mike McAllowitz, and he's written several other books. I believe most recently I read Profit First, which is another book that he wrote that gives an excellent way of dealing with your business in terms of finances and some, again, concrete or actionable ways that you can go about kind of doing the pay yourself first idea. While also managing some other areas. So not here to review that, but he's got several other books. He's a well-known author. I really enjoy the way he sets up his books. He's very good. He's got a lot of good storytelling abilities, but he also gives some really actionable advice. So I found it to be the same with this book as well with Clockwork. And, the big idea behind this is that you want to streamline your business so that you're focusing on the queen bee role. And when I say that you are, I mean that your business is. And the whole idea is that you should be able to identify this, and then you go out and really work on protecting it, serving it, all that, so that you can then build your business around that idea and start to remove yourself out of it. And there's, of course, some ways you can go about doing that, which we'll talk about. But that's the main gist of the book. And the book is about overall how to, again, start to remove yourself from in the business so you can work on the business as well as get the systems to support you. All right. So just a quick breakdown of the chapters as far as the ones that I believe there's a couple of appendixes there might have been, but the big ones are starting out with more of a story about why you're stuck, moving into how you can analyze your company time, which is really good. I'm going to definitely talk about that some more. Declaring your queen bee role or QBR. Okay, so finding it is first of all the important part, and finding out what it is, which is also important. It's not so much that like maybe you aren't the queen bee role. There's a process or there's a method or something that's going on. That is the QBR. So you need to find out what that is. And then protecting and serving it, how you actually go about that. And then going into some things where I think depending on where you're at, what you've learned, what systems you already have, it may not be as important, but for someone who doesn't have these things that are further listed, it could be really important. So like capture systems, Mike gives a great way that I use and have been for a long time of using videos to walk through processes and then use those as process docs or hand them off and have someone else create the process docs and then be responsible for updating them. He also goes into balancing teams, knowing who you're serving. Right. So identifying your customers and your, going into that type of analysis. And then some other ways or other areas, like how to keep an eye on your business. What do you do if you get pushback on this? And then throughout the book, he had mentioned the 4-week vacation and the idea of the book being once you implement this, you should be able to step back far enough that you can take a 4-week vacation. Okay. So as far as this, like what I found to be most important and what I will implement, as somebody, like I mentioned, who's already got processes in place for creating processes, using videos like Loom or YouTube or whatever it is, and handing those off, as well as having some of the other areas down. I think definitely the queen bee role. I like this idea, just identifying what it is, for any business, whether you're a consultant, a contractor, you're selling services or information or goods, like finding out what it is. What is that one thing that we do? And then how can we go about building everyone around that so that it's supporting it and then going after it? Like that's where your time, that's where your energy should be spent. So totally agree with that. I think that's great. I believe maybe it skipped one. Let me hop out here and see if I can go over there. That's weird. All right. Well, anyways, you can see it. Analyzing the company time. This is actually the one I wanted to focus on. And this has been really interesting to me. I really like what he did with this in terms of having 4. Okay. It talks about the 4 Ds. And the first one is doing. The second one is deciding. The third one is delegating. And the fourth one is designing. And these would be like the 4 kind of levels of what you spend your time doing within your business. Okay, doing is what it sounds like. You're doing the work. You're doing something. All right, if you're deciding, maybe that's partially, he goes into detail on this, which I like, but it could be where you've partially assigned a task or you think you've delegated, but really you're just telling someone what to do, and then they're coming back to you to answer all the questions. And then there's the next level would be delegation, where you're truly saying, here's this project, go and do it. You have ownership and responsibility. If you make a mistake, that's fine. That's how you're going to learn. But that person is running with the ball. It's truly been delegated and off of your plate. And then above that would be design time, and time for where you're literally designing the business. Where are we going? What are offers? What are, the big picture stuff, I guess, is what it generally breaks down to. And I don't have the numbers in front of me because to me it wasn't important to be exactly right on this. Mike's got his own breakdown, something along the lines of 80% doing, 10% deciding, and I may be off slightly on this, but maybe 5 to 10% of deciding, and then delegating, and then I think it was 8 to 10% designing. So you can tell me how far off I am from 100 on that. But the idea obviously being that as a whole, your business should be focused on doing, which is providing value to the end customer or client. And then you need to also, though, be spending time on these other areas where even if you might be a solopreneur or you're just the only person in your business right now, a lot of times you look at it and you're like, wow, I spent 0 minutes this week designing my business as far as where we're headed. What's the long-term plans? What's working well? What can I do to get better results? Things like that. So even implementing 15 to 30 minutes of that could be huge. And just to follow up on that, I would say that it's important to look at this from a full team standpoint. So if you have a couple outsourcers, you need to account for their time. So it may be that you need to spend more time designing because at each level, people may not be performing all these tasks. You kind of want to incorporate everyone into this. Something that I recently came across too that I decided to tie into this was this neat little thing from Timemuller. So it's got a little base. You can check it out. The link's below, and it's basically an octahedron has got a writable surface, and so you can assign different things. So I've gone ahead and written on here doing. See if I can get this right. Deciding, delegating, and designing, along with phone calls, a couple other odds and ends, things like learning. And as I go through the day, I have this in front of me and I set it down and it just starts tracking it automatically, which is great because I was like, man, I highly value time tracking, but it's really hard to do. It's something I do from time to time. I would go through and list out my day. What have I been working on? But it's time consuming and it's hard to do. So I saw this that I was just starting to use. I read Clockwork and, lights went off. Said, hey, this is a great way. And Timemuller, as a service, they also email you weekly what you spent your time on. And since I have it set up with the 4Ds, I can go through and see how I'm doing. So I'm just a couple weeks into that. But I think this is a great tie-in and a great way to get some feedback and to put this into practice, because I think one of the most difficult parts for people is time tracking. It's a really high payoff activity. But I know from my personal experience and a lot of other people's that it can be very difficult for you to implement. You get behind. If you're doing it by hand, you forget to write stuff down. In a couple hours, you don't even remember what you were working on. So from that point of view, I think it can be difficult, but this has been fantastic. So kind of a cool tie-in. If you're looking to implement the Clockwork ideas and the 4Ds, grabbing something like the Timemuller device so it's sitting on the desk in front of you, and you remember to flip it around as you're doing tasks or servicing client needs. You can put it on doing. If you're answering questions from an employee or a VA, you can put it on deciding. If you're truly working on handing off a task, to a VA again or an assistant who has ownership of it, then you are delegating. And then that time you're designing the business, you flip it to designing. So I found it to be very helpful so far. I'm looking forward to doing that some more. So, excuse me, just as a summary, I just think it's a great way to view time management, specifically the 4Ds. I found that to be one of the most helpful parts of this without going overboard, because that's the other part of the time management techniques is sometimes it can get so granular that it becomes an impediment to itself. I like it's 4 comes up a lot in terms of, breadth or depth. It's 4 things to remember. It's not that difficult. It's not like you have 4 and then each 4 has a 4 subcategories or anything like that. It's just, nope. Got 4 main categories. I just need to remember that stuff. Also with the core business processes and the QBR, I think that's great. I really recommend, at least thinking about that. I definitely need to do that myself and further identify that, but I'll be spending some more time going back through that and looking at that. And then any projects moving forward, just saying like, okay, what is the QBR? How do we protect it? So on and so forth. So my recommendation for this book is a 2 thumbs up. Definitely go check it out. For myself, and if if you've seen any of my other book reviews and know a little bit about my background, I feel like I really liked the first half of the book, but then was able to skip through some of the other things. Like I said, this capturing systems, knowing who you're serving, and push back some of that stuff. I would say at least skim through it and see if it's new to you. If it is, stop, read it. If it's not, though, you may be able to get through this a little bit quicker than you think. And I think that analyzing the time and then finding or declaring the QBR and finding a process for that is going to be really, really helpful. So great book. Definitely recommend it.